Latest reports from Afghanistan say that a car bomb has gone off near the home of the defence minister in the capital, Kabul. Our chief international correspondent, Lise Doucette, told the BBC that armed attackers are inside the residence as fighting continues. In the last hour, there have been reports of a powerful blast in the centre of the capital. An investigation into New York's governor, Andrew Cuomo, has found that he sexually harassed several women, including employees, at his office. He's previously denied any wrongdoing. Wildfires are still burning in southern Turkey. Strong winds are making it harder to get the blazes under control. The police in Ukraine have opened a murder investigation after Belarusian opposition activist Vitaly Shishov was found hanged in a park in Kiev. The exile group he worked for blamed the Belarusian authorities for the killing.
In China, officials say the city of Wuhan, where COVID-19 started, will test all its citizens for the coronavirus after new infections are reported around the country. Israel is seeking international support, but could act alone over an attack on an Israeli-operated oil ship last week near Oman, the Prime Minister says. In Ukraine, police launch a criminal investigation after a Belarusian activist is found dead near his home in Kyiv. And the mayor of New York says the city will require proof of COVID-19 vaccination for indoor activities.
Beginning of my presidency, I've been very clear on it. We need to attack this virus globally, not just at home, because it's in America's self-interest to do so. The virus knows no boundaries. You can't build a wall high enough to keep it out. There's no wall high enough or ocean wide enough to keep us safe from the vaccine from the COVID-19 in other countries. As of today, the United States has shipped over 110 million doses of U.S. vaccines to 65 countries that are among the hardest hit in the world. We have a pandemic of the unvaccinated. Now, I know there's a lot of misinformation out there, so here are the facts. If you're vaccinated, you are highly unlikely to get COVID-19. And even if you do, the chances are you won't show any symptoms, and if you do, they'll most likely be very mild. That means if you're unvaccinated, you are much more likely to, 1, get COVID-19, 2, get hospitalized, and 3, die if you get it. This is a tragedy. People are dying and will die who don't have to die. The data is absolutely clear. So if you're unvaccinated, please, please, please get the shot. But just don't take it from me. Just read the news. Listen to the voices of the unvaccinated patients in the hospital. They're spending the most powerful message to their families and everyone around the world. Folks, this isn't about politics. The virus doesn't care if you're a Democrat or Republican. This is about life and death. Life and death.
We begin with the Tokyo Games, where Jamaican sprinter Elaine Thompson-Herah has won gold in the women's 200 meters. With the 100 meters already in the bag, she becomes the first woman to seal a second successive Olympic sprint double. Thompson-Herah cruised home in 21.53 seconds. Saturday's 100-meter time was a new Olympic record. She said she had a rough week and hadn't slept after that final, but winning 2 golds again felt amazing. 18-year-old Christine Mboma of Namibia took the silver. Gabrielle Thomas from the United States claimed the bronze. Both Mboma and fellow Namibian Beatrice Masilingi were able to compete despite being barred from the 400 meters due to excess testosterone levels. This is the first Olympic Games since new World Athletics regulations came in to cover female athletes whose natural testosterone levels are much higher than the typical female range. But they cover only distances from 400 meters to 1 mile. Well, Tuesday saw the artistic gymnastics action come to a close at Tokyo 2020. And U.S. superstar Simone Biles made her return with a bronze medal on the balance beam. The multiple champion from 2016 had previously withdrawn from all other individual events to focus on her mental health. The beam was her last chance to compete at these games. After a relatively risk-free routine, it was time to break out the smiles. Biles said she feels this bronze is more special than the one she took in the same event at Rio. 2 teenage Chinese athletes were above her on the podium, with Guan Chen winning gold and Tang Shijing the silver. The meet-ending final event was the men's horizontal bar, and it was won by host nation Japan. 19-year-old Hashimoto Daiki added his second gold of these Olympics, following the men's individual all-around last week. Hashimoto reacted to his win, saying he had grown at the games, and he'll continue to search for the perfect performance. In women's boxing, Japanese featherweight Irie Sena has taken gold with a unanimous points decision in the final. She's the first female Japanese boxer to win an Olympic title. Irie was up against Nesty Petesio from the Philippines. The judges scored the bout 5-0 to Irie. The 20-year-old said the win feels like a dream, and the reality of her achievement still hasn't sunk in. The two boxers have competed multiple times in the past. Petesio defeated Irie at the World Championships in 2019. Featherweight is one of two new women's weight classes added to the Olympic card for greater gender equality. Next, in men's football, Spain stopped the host nation's bid for gold with a decisive goal in extra time. Japan was aiming to head to the finals for the very first time in the Olympics, but that dream has been shattered. The country will now look to grab the bronze, their first medal in the sport since 1968. The day's other semifinal ended goalless after extra time, but Brazil downed Mexico 4-1 in the penalty kick shootout. The defending champion will face Spain on Saturday. Now, New Zealand weightlifter Laurel Hubbard has become the first openly transgender woman to compete on the biggest stage in sports. The 43-year-old had an early exit from the women's over 87-kilogram category. But as NHK World's Yamamoto Saori reports, her presence at the Games is sending a message.
Laurel Hubbard's Olympic debut was quick. After 3 unsuccessful lifts, she was out. Hubbard is one of at least 160 openly LGBTQ athletes at the Tokyo Games, but none has come under greater scrutiny. The Kiwi weightlifter competed as a man before transitioning in her mid-30s. After a break from the sport, she returned to compete as a woman and earn an Olympic spot. The IOC issued new guidance on this in 2015. It said transgender women need to meet certain testosterone levels for 12 months before competing and meet conditions set by their sporting federation. Hubbard did that. Many saw the moment as a breakthrough for transgender inclusion. Hubbard chose to keep quiet, but her achievement sparked heated debate. Top female athletes and others spoke out against the rules. They said IOC policies do not address the benefits of going through male puberty on bone and muscle mass. Soon, advocacy groups filled the media spotlight that Hubbard had left empty.
We are just saying that a person does not have the right to simply choose whatever category they want to play in.
The IOC says each sport needs to strike a balance between inclusion and fairness. Raita Kyoko agrees. The expert in sport and gender studies says getting there will require significant research.
We need to find more scientific evidence, but if we treat transgender athletes as if they don't exist, we cannot get the data. So it's important to open doors to them and find a way that allows them to take part.
Raita says athletes and organizers are still at the starting line. The IOC is set to release a new framework after the Tokyo 2020 Games.
This debate over transgender athletes is a wake-up call for us to think about whether medals are the most important thing in the Olympics.
After competing, Hubbard broke her silence. She thanked the IOC for its commitment to Olympic principles and for showing that sport is for all people. Yamamoto Saori, NHK World, Tokyo.
A Belarusian Olympic sprinter seeking asylum in Europe has told the Associated Press officials from her country left no doubt she would face punishment back home.
They made it clear that upon my return home, I would definitely face some form of punishment, and that if I were to refuse to return home and entered the 200-meter race, I would be fired and kicked off the national team. There were also thinly veiled hints that more would await me.
Tsimanouskaya earlier said her coaches tried to force her back to Belarus after she complained on social media they ordered her to run in an event she wasn't scheduled for. She said her comments were seen as a slap at the Belarusian government, which has increasingly cracked down on its critics. Poland has granted her a humanitarian visa. She's believed to be at the Polish embassy in Tokyo. Ambassador Paweł Milowski posted a photo with the athlete on Tuesday. He tweeted, "She's doing well and thanks us all for extending a helping hand against those who do not wish her well." Tsimanouskaya is expected to leave for Poland soon. The Japanese government is revising its patient treatment policy to cope with the growing number of coronavirus infections. Prime Minister Suga Yoshihide says COVID-19 patients without severe symptoms will be asked to recuperate at home in principle. Suga met with representatives of the Japan Medical Association and other healthcare groups. He asked for their cooperation in enforcing the new policy.
The government shifted its basic policy on Monday to ensure everyone could receive necessary medical care according to their symptoms. I am asking again for further support to secure hospital beds and improve the environment for patients recovering at home.
Suga's decision comes as the rapid surge in COVID-19 cases is putting an unprecedented strain on the healthcare system. This hospital near Tokyo has been struggling with the recent spike. Doctors say all the beds have been full even after building a makeshift facility in March.
We have responded by adding more beds, but this is still not enough. The healthcare system is already overwhelmed, but the situation could get even worse.
One of the major challenges for local governments is how to provide proper medical care for COVID-19 patients who've been isolating at home. There are currently more than 10,000 of them in Tokyo. This woman says her daughter had a fever of nearly 39 degrees Celsius, so she repeatedly called the hotline for advice, but had problems getting a hold of anyone.
Patients who are asked to isolate at home could see their condition deteriorate quickly and could die.
Health authorities across the nation reported more than 12,000 new infections on Tuesday. That's the second highest daily tally after last Saturday. 10 deaths were confirmed, a far lower figure than in the previous waves earlier this year. In the United States, the Centers for Disease Control and Prevention says the 7-day average of coronavirus cases is higher than it was during the peak period last summer. The agency is urging people to get vaccinated. The CDC said as of Friday, the 7-day average stood at about 72,000 cases. That marked a rise of 44% from the previous week. Health officials stressed the Delta variant is highly contagious. They pointed out infections are spreading, particularly in the southern states, where vaccination rates are low.
Our vaccines are working to prevent severe illness, hospitalizations, and death. Vaccines are providing protection both for individuals and communities across the country.
A CDC official said U.S. vaccination rates have risen, with 70% of adults there already receiving at least one shot as of Monday. That milestone figure was reached roughly 1 month after President Joe Biden's 4th of July target. Shifting now to world weather, thousands of people on the Big Island of Hawaii have been evacuated as a huge blaze hit the area. Our meteorologist Sakamori has the details in our world weather report.
Hello there. We don't usually associate Hawaii and bushfires because it has a wet tropical climate, but a big one is now occurring over the Big Island. Take a look at this footage. 2 houses have been destroyed as a wildfire raged on Hawaii's Big Island this week. Thousands of people were forced to evacuate over the weekend, and officials are watching the possibility for strong winds that could fan the flames. The fire has covered 16,000 hectares and is potentially one of the biggest blazes in history for the island.